Hi, good evening. It's Thursday, and I want to talk briefly about Chapter 5 about consumer behavior and to give you a little preparation for Quiz 5, which is going to be due tomorrow, Friday, before midnight. I apologize for putting this lecture up very late. We had the quiz up from last week, and some of you indeed have already taken the quiz. I had some notes up on Blackboard, the PowerPoint lecture notes. You read the chapter, so some of you fine. Others might need a little review. So that's what I'll do here. So, consumer behavior. What is consumer behavior? How does it relate to, in more general terms, to marketing? So let's think about marketing as a coin. It's a coin and it has two sides. And on the one side, you have everything that's in relation to the company, to the brand strategy, the kinds of products it creates, the processes it uses to communicate to the public, all of those things are on the brand side. And there are people in marketing who work on that side, who work in companies, who have to strategize and think about how the company can better position itself and what the company should be doing next, what its competitors are doing. So that's one side of marketing. And you have consultants, you have people who work in companies like American Express or Brooklyn College. And these people in marketing are thinking about what they can do to enhance the situation of the brand through marketing. That's one aspect. On the other side, you have the consumer, and you have people who only study the consumer or primarily are focused on that. And so they need to understand, why does the consumer behave however he or she behaves, what factors, what kinds of influences go into the consumer decision-making process, which is what we're studying within this chapter or this segment. So that's one side. And the Luxury Institute, the group that did the survey or that processed or analyzed the survey that you looked at, that you evaluated for luxury assignment number 5, that Luxury Institute is a research firm that is particularly concerned with consumer behavior in a very, very particular segment of the population, the high net worth luxury consumer. So it's very specialized, very, very narrowly defined. And what they do is they survey, they interview, they do focus groups where they get people, sitting around a conference table, engaged in a conversation about these luxury brands, about their patterns of behavior in response to luxury. And they may do things, more qualitative kinds of things, like ask people to keep diaries or keep records of all their luxury activities, so that they can really get a sense of a deep understanding of how people interact with luxury brands. But as you can imagine, if you want to really understand something fully, you have to understand both sides. So you understand the luxury consumer, that's great, but then if you don't understand the luxury brands, you're not going to really understand what the consumer is telling you about, why they're complaining, why they're happy. So you really have to know both ends to be able to understand the situation fully. And so in marketing, a really big component is consumer, but there's other environmental, there's factors in relation to the brand that are important as well. We're going to focus now on the consumer. So what can we know about the consumer, or what are some of the things that we need to know in order to understand the consumer? It's a big question, but we can think about the individual as having different components. And every individual has psychological components, right? We have our personalities, we have behavioral patterns that might have been learned, we have cognitive, we have attitudes. All of those things are, in a sense, part of our individual psychology. But it's very difficult to separate what is psychological, what's social, what's cultural, political. All of these things are obviously interacting with one another, plus they're interacting with the larger environment. So that's the challenge of marketing, to try to understand all of these things, because there are so many things that go into this consumer purchase decision process that we're looking at in this chapter. Okay, so the psychological we spoke about. Then you have social components, right? You have, think about, for example, are you wealthy or are you poor? Are you middle class? That's your socioeconomic status. That's going to be a really important determinant in behavior, as you can well imagine. So if you don't have very much money, your choices in the marketplace are severely going to be limited, and you're not going to have the wide open possibility that somebody who's really wealthy and doesn't have to worry about money and never has to think about it is going to have, right? Then they can really just think about what they like, what makes them feel good, how happy they are with Prada versus Burberry. Those are the kinds of questions you could focus on, because you don't have to worry about where the money is coming from if you have a trust fund or you have a huge source of income that's very dependable. So that's one aspect of the individual, right? And then there's also things like culture, right? We talked about when we did the Who Am I project, a lot of people mentioned as a defining characteristic of who you are. A lot of people mentioned religion, for example, and that can have an influence on everything from what you eat to the kinds of places you might go on vacation, or the kinds of movies you might see, or the clothes you wear, the brands you might like. Maybe some brands could be inappropriate, for in terms of if you have concerns about modesty or more conservative values. Certain brands might not meet those value systems, or those may not be in line with those kinds of attitudes. So religion is one aspect of culture. Other aspects that are important: ethnicity, race, right? For some people, it can be extremely important. For others, maybe the fact that they are Hispanic American or Mexican American maybe doesn't really influence their life very much. They're not really identifying very heavily with that aspect of who they are. Being male or female, it's important, right? It's an important characteristic that can divide us in various ways. An example, I was talking yesterday, it was an interesting conversation. I was talking to somebody who had been at Brooklyn College for many years, and he knew a professor for years, a female professor, and was talking about her character and how she presented herself. And then one day, after years of knowing this person, the person decided to undergo an operation to become a male, and is still at Brooklyn College and is now still a professor, but now a male versus a female. And he was saying to me that when the professor became a male, really the professor completely changed. It wasn't just in appearance. Now all of a sudden she has a beard and is wearing suits and has broad shoulders, or maybe not all of a sudden, but over some period of time, had totally physically changed. But not only that, but the way, obviously, men and women walk differently and talk differently and have a different type of social presentation. And that's why, of course, we don't know the personal motivations, but we know that this professor decided to change. Why did the professor decide? Because she wasn't happy with the way people treated her or the way she felt being a woman, right? So there was a different kind of universe, you could say, that you're inhabiting when you're a female. There are, people see you differently. Certain people think about it, if you're a woman, you have certain relationship with other women, certain things you can talk about with women friends or female friends that you don't feel comfortable talking about with male friends. So you treat your male friends differently. She's being treated differently by students, by colleagues, and didn't like that, or didn't feel that was the way she wanted to live, for what we're guessing, but we know that there is that social component. And so becoming a male, now all of a sudden you're in a totally different world, and we're interested in this class in marketing, so we can imagine that transition means now you're going to go different places to get your hair cut, to buy your shoes, to buy your clothing, a whole different set of friends maybe, or friends relating to you in different ways. Maybe some people might not accept it. That's certainly, there's going to be all kinds of transitions that you have to make. You have to learn to carry yourself different, to speak in a different tone of voice, to adapt to the world, and to be accepted and seen by the world very, very differently. And so, as a consumer, again, a whole range of different possibilities that one would be encountering. So, of course, there's a lot of crossover as well, right? That males and females do some of the same things and have similar interests, but there are divergent paths as well. So that's important. Let's think about the stages in the consumer decision-making process. That's another aspect of the chapter that we should think about and understand. So there are different stages. So the first stage in the process, you should understand these different stages, is the process in which you recognize that there is a problem, whatever the problem may be. I don't have enough milk in the refrigerator. I'm out of cat food and the cat is hungry. I need to get cat food. That's a recognition of a problem. Or something like I decide I don't like the table that I have and I want to have a new table, a different table. So now I'm faced with a situation where I have to do some kind of research, I have to search for a new table. And then there's a process where you're assessing. Should I go to IKEA? Should I go to Raymour and Flanigan? What's the price like? Is it going to be, am I going to get, is it the same return policy? So all of those issues are going to come into play. And then there's finally the purchase, and then the post-purchase behavior. Am I going to blog about it in a positive way? Am I going to, whatever, interact with the brand somehow? Like to become a fan of, if you can do that, of IKEA on Facebook, because I like my table so much and I become, really connected to that brand. So there's all kinds of possibilities, and understand those possibilities. Also have a sense, or general sense, of the importance of lifestyle. Understand about VALS, which is a way of assessing people and predicting and analyzing consumers based on the kind of lifestyle choices that they make. So if you do, you take this sort of survey, you could be put into various categories, and the basis is along the lines of the lifestyle of the consumer. So understand that. I'm going to finish now and continue with another video, which is going to talk about the analysis of the advertisement. I also want to talk a little bit about the luxury project and the groups. And eventually, a little later after this, I want to talk about the Brooklyn Business Project that we're going to do as well. So have a good evening, and thank you for listening.